The third arc of Wings of Fire is perhaps the most controversial of all the arcs. The arc started off strong. The Lost Continent introduced us to the titular Lost Continent. The Hive Queen allowed us to dive into how it functioned, and the Poison Jungle not only answered all of our questions about the Leaflings and mind control, but it also had our first LGBTQ main character. There are critiques of those books. I personally critique The Lost Continent for having a weak protagonist. I haven't heard any complaints about the Hive Queen, if I'm being honest. It's just a solid book. The Poison Jungle has been compared to Work Cat's traveling book because of how much is spent going around in the jungle, and of course we all know about the infamous homophobic reviews. The final two books of the arc, on the other hand, lose the traction that the first half of the arc generated. The Dangerous Gift has been called filler, as the protagonist does not personally fight against the antagonist in any way besides calling for the creation of a task force. In the next book, we follow said task force into the heart of Mantala. This was the final book in the arc, the climax that brings all the elements in the arc together that we didn't know were important until now. Flames of Hope had a climax. It had a dramatic reveal. It had a heartbreaking finale. However, in the end, it failed to make much of an impression with readers and is widely regarded as the worst main series Wings of Fire book. How did the dramatic, action-packed climax of the series manage to be considered worse than the book before it, which was called filler? Well, let's talk about that. Before we get started, if you are new to this channel, please think about subscribing. I regularly post both Wings of Fire and Workout's content, so you'll never be bored. And to my current subscribers, thank you so much for supporting me. I wouldn't have gone here without y'all. First of all, there's a crowding issue. At the start of the novel, we are introduced to the Stealth Team. The Stealth Team is comprised of 8 characters, this including the novel's protagonist. It also includes previous protagonists, and to be more specific, fan favorite characters. There's Moon, Keebly, Link, Sky, Ren, and Tsunami, who really should be running Jade Mountain Academy and has minimal reason to be there. There's also 2 newcomers, Pineapple and Bullfrog. Pineapple is given some characterization after he gets captured, but Bullfrog gets nada. We literally know nothing about him, besides he's quiet and maybe likes history. We don't even know where his sibs are, and Mudwings love their sibs. All of the dragons on the Stealth Team compete for attention. Tui wants to appeal to the crowd by bringing back their fan favorites. All the fan favorites have their own interesting personalities, which create really engaging and funny situations. However, since there isn't a lot of page space, it is rushed. I do have to say that I enjoyed the opening where the team is together, no matter how brief it was. Seeing Luna come to terms with Cricket was a really nice side plot. I just wish that more was done with it, like perhaps something connecting it to the themes of the arc. I wish more was done with Luna in general. Editor Rogan here. I just wanted to clarify what I meant was, though she did have personality and it was shown, it wasn't shown to its fullest extent, so we didn't get to see much of it compared to characters like Clay or Snowfall. You'll see me again in this video as well. I had to redo some lines because the dog's barking. She lacked a lot of personality because of how much time was dedicated to other dragons, and it made me fail to connect to her as a character. When Luna is dragged into the cave, the narrative crowding begins to really ramp up. When she connects to the other mind, she loses one of the things that made her stand out, her flame silk. In addition, we are now constantly switching between Luna and the other 7 dragons on the Stealth Team. I feel like Tui got the idea that she could do a lot of head switching from the Dangerous Gift, where she pulled it off fairly well. However, she didn't. The narrative of the visions were simple in the Dangerous Gift. Most characters were one-offs. Meanwhile, Flames of Hope follows 7 other dragons consistently, and we have to keep up with what every single one of them is doing. Flames of Hope jumps around every chapter and spends a lot of time with those characters. We're with the Stealth Team, now we're with Luna, now the Stealth Team has broken up again, so we follow around Stealth Team 1, then the Mindscape with Dusky, then the Stealth Team 2, 1 again. I'm not sure whether it went like that, but it was confusing all the same. Beyond that, we have the true reason why Luna fails as a protagonist. She isn't proactive, or at least she isn't physically proactive. She's not doing the fighting. With the Dangerous Gift, where there wasn't much blood or action for the rest of the book, the visions were still fine. That was because Tui knew when to throw in a vision. She didn't put a vision in too much, but she didn't throw them in too little. She did just enough to keep a reader's interest and also to push her along Snowfall's character arc. But with Flames of Hope, we are constantly shown all the action happening where Luna can't be involved. And it just makes you think how much you'd rather be reading about what the Stealth Team are doing rather than Luna. Another reason this book doesn't work well is that nothing is earned. In the narrative, Luna tends to sit back and let things come to her. She didn't have to dig through memories to find out about the scorching, it was presented to her. In any other book, there would have been a dramatic heist such as the Book of Clear Sight, or she at least would have had to go looking in a library for a scroll like Moon. Luna is fighting in the narrative. However, her conflict is more intangible, whilst the Stealth Teens is more tangible and hence easier to visualize. So when she talks out the problems with Lizard and somehow wins, it feels unearned. She was not the one doing the hard work, she was not the one fighting off the Queen's 15 guards, and yet she's the one rewarded? It just isn't fair. The finale also wasn't that dramatic. It was a talk out your feelings finale without the benefits of the antagonist being a dragon who the fanbase already adored, and who the protagonist had already fought, such as Darkstalker. That brings us to the next issue. The main reason why Flames of Hope fails is the antagonist. We started this arc fairly strong. We had a clear antagonist Wasp, who had been abusing the word of the Prophet Clearsight in order to make an apartheid state with hive wings on top. In the first book, we are given many clear moments to connect with Wasp. This is in part due to the empathetic nature of the main character, Blue, who tries to envision the lives of other dragons, even the distant Queen Wasp. We get to feel her presence throughout the book as well. She is constantly possessing other dragons, ripping them from their lives. She pursues Blue, creating a connection with him as she wants him. It makes the conflict with Wasp personal. Queen Wasp does not show up physically in the book, but even that adds to her character. Blue says that he felt like she didn't care enough to see him after he was captured for trying to take the Book of Clearsight, which is the most important religious object in the Hivewing religion, and Blue is also a Flamesilk. Then in the second book, we get even closer to the core. We even get a glimpse of Queen Wasp. Book 3 turns all of that on its head. We do not get to meet Queen Wasp at all in the book, as it is spent trampling around the jungle. The source of Wasp's powers are revealed though. Sundew is venturing into the depths of the poison jungle to find a cure for the mind control. She finds the dragon who invented the mind control, a dragon named Hawthorne. He seems untrustworthy and he is very flighty, but Sundew trusts him when he presents her with a cure. But as they deploy the cure, it's revealed that it's not the cure, it is the source of the mind control itself. And even worse, Wasp is not the one in control of the mind-controlled dragons. The plant itself is sentient, and it is controlling an entire continent. Now instead of a physical dragon whom we are fighting against a plant, which is harder to wrap your head around. You can easily visualize a war, a giant dragon as tall as a mountain. The consciousness of a sentient plant, not so much. It's hard to take an evil plant seriously when plants are just so unthreatening. The largest flaw in switching villains halfway through the arc is the lack of build-up. All this time in the books, we have been fighting against Wasp, not the Other Mind, and we've never been hinted that Other Mind exists. It feels like a criminal letdown. Stemming from that is the lack of a personal connection. It was Wasp who was going after a protagonist, not the plant. We have no connection to the plant! This could have been repaired by making the Other Mind and Wasp the same individual. Extended Other Mind exposure could have melded their brains together, so all the time we were fighting the Other Mind, not Wasp. That way we could have kept the personal connection and be not fighting against an impersonal force. However, we could also keep the Other Mind too. The problem of having no connection with the villain is delayed in the arc because the Dangerous Gift doesn't use the Other Mind as a villain, and instead it is a character piece where Snowfall herself is a villain. I went more in depth with that in how the Dangerous Gift works without a villain. In Flames of Hope, it begins to catch up though. Furthermore, it is revealed once again that the Other Mind isn't all that it seems. Now, instead of it just being a plant, it is also a dragon and a scavenger. Not only was this poorly foreshadowed, even worsely foreshadowed than the last one, it just had no time for build-up at all. And we have no time to form a connection with these two. And the little connection that we had to the Other Mind through Wasp is fully severed, and Tui can no longer draw upon that. And she even cuts herself off from that in this book, as she says that Wasp is under the control of the Other Mind and not on the same level as Freedom and Rattlesnake. Then there's the problem of how the main character connects to the villain. At the start of the story, the protagonist is supposed to be someone who has a connection to the villain. If it isn't personal, it needs to be philosophical, or have the villain be their foil. But that doesn't apply to Luna. She's a Flamesilk who has no connection to scavengers. She was imprisoned similarly to Lizard, but that connection is never fully drawn upon. She has no reason to be here to further the theme, and she has no connection to the villain, so why is she here? A better choice for a protagonist would have been Sky. Sky has a history with scavengers that is positive and could be used to foil lizards. His upbeat attitude would serve to do so as well. He also has a childish naivety that Lizard does not possess despite being much younger than him mentally. A crutch that Tui uses to give Luna a connection to Lizard is Dusky, a random dragonette who appears out of nowhere and gets dragged into the hole. Dusky's purpose in the narrative is likely to raise the stakes, as now children are involved and no one wants children to get hurt. He also has a better connection to Lizard than Luna does, as they are both children. However, Dusky feels very forced. His presence feels contrived, and he does nothing to advance the plot, and I can barely remember any events that happen with him in the story right now. Luna also failed as a protagonist because she is a flat character done wrong. A flat character is a character who does not undergo any arcs during their story, and instead changes the world around them. Think Paddington or Captain America. Luna does affect the world around her. She is able to convince Lizard to let her be free, but it's not because of her shining personality or any traits related to it. It's from her ability to put Lizard in the shoes of other dragons and make her sympathize with them, which is not her strength. If you want a hero to defeat a villain, you have to use their strength. That is actually the strength of another Flame Silk, who possibly would have been better to fit that role, her brother Blue. So we have a failed villain, whom the audience fails to connect to, and then we have a misplaced protagonist, who could have been anyone else and been better. Those are all the reasons that Flames of Hope sucked. There were a lot of them. In truth, it was set up to fail since book 3 when we lost connection with our primary antagonist, but Tui still could have turned it around by having a more proactive protagonist and by making us earn information. However, the one thing that creates a clear difference between how the Dangerous Gift and Flames of Hope are seen is the failure to create a meaningful connection. Connections are part of what makes us human. It makes us able to communicate and form societies. It enables us to meet people and do things that we never could have done alone, like go to the moon or genetically engineer monkeys to glow. In the Dangerous Gift, we are made to connect to Snowfall through her arc. Luna does not have any arc, and hardly gives off any personality as she is crowded out of her own mind and out of her own story by other characters. Because of that, we fail to connect to her, and in the end, she fails to receive a lasting connection. We have the same issue with Lizard as well, as I hinted at earlier. You may have seen my initial review video where I said I cried when she died, and I did, but a couple of days later, I wasn't really thinking of it at all, and the impact hardly stayed with me, because in the end, it was unearned, and most of the emotion was just the visceral image of a child asking to die, and not because it was the villain being defeated, or that was sad to Lizard herself and connected to the character, though those two do play a minor part. You can really see how little impact Freedom's death had in the fandom when you compare it to Darkstalker's. He didn't even die, but we had a connection to him that was not established to Freedom. Freedom's death felt more like, oh no, a child died, let me make one pity AU. While Darkstalker's was impactful enough to have essays, fanfictions, and an entire subsection of maps centered around it. People still write about it to this day, in much larger quantities than Freedom's. And Freedom's book came out like what? Only 6 months ago, whilst Darkstalker's death was over 3 years ago now? I'm not sure about the timing, correct me in the comments. His death also sparks controversy and has a long-lasting effect on the Wings of Fire fandom because of that. I'm planning on writing a video on his death soon as well, so add my video essay to that list. So, how could we have formed an emotional connection with Lizard? Hints at her earlier in the books. Katydid could say, sometimes it is worse than others about being possessed, and say it's almost like Queen Wasp has two personalities, one which brings me through the hive to the schools and stares there mournfully, and the other on manhunts. Have the librarian hint at voices fighting in her head, have a white-eyed dragon discover them, but then mysteriously leave them alone, and then finally in the poison jungle, have her speak directly through Hawthorne. Those are just my ideas though, and I have no idea how they'd actually be implemented. I'm just throwing things at a wall. Without this pivotal part of the human experience, Flames of Hope falls flat, and I doubt it will ever create a long-lasting connection with any reader besides one of mild annoyance that such a great series fell so far. Man, after making 2 videos reviewing the last books of Arc 3 and their failings, I'm incredibly tempted to rewrite the last 2 books of the arc. If you want to see me do that, comment down below. Now, this video isn't me hating on Tui at all, it's just pointing out flaws in her writing because I feel like learning about the flaws in your favorite author's writing just enables you to be a better writer yourself. It enables you to see how even your favorite people could be flawed. So this isn't me hating on Tui. If you like this video, feel free to subscribe. I make Wings of Fire and Work Hats videos pretty often, and your support would mean a lot to me. And to those who have already subscribed, thank you so much for your continued support. I would have gone here without y'all. Peace out.